When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind around with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The 18 that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind around for Monday night. Download a Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind around for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind to Raw. It is John Pollock and Wai Ting for a big week.
I guess it is. Is it really?
When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind.
It's a big week for him.
Who?
The song. That's all I meant.
Yes.
How are you
Been a
doing,
while
Wai?
since I had one of those loops. Sorry about that, everybody.
It's okay.
Off my game.
Everyone will collectively
Show's
forgive you.
ruined.
Dude, have you been outside?
Yes, I have. Yeah, plenty of times today.
It's really cold up here. It is super cold.
It's cold everywhere. It seems.
Yeah, it does seem like it. You go on Instagram and it's like half the world. It's like they've never seen snow before.
I guess many places don't often really see snow at this time, or at least in this volume.
Everyone's getting it. It seems like. You know what the new fad is that I'm definitely getting tired of is people having to share their cold plunges.
I haven't noticed. Is that a new fad?
It seems to be on my feeds. It is.
What exactly is that? Just like a cold dip, like an ice bath type of thing?
Yeah, people do it like in their backyard in the snow. It's like, look at me. I'm gonna get hypothermia. I'm like, okay, cool. You gotta broadcast this for me. It's like, congratulations. This is a great idea.
Somehow I managed to stay away from it all.
Well, that's smart. Smart.
Yeah.
How was your weekend?
It was all right. Yeah. I mean, not that eventful outside of the wrestling, I suppose.
No, I wasn't assuming you had any kind of personal life aside from wrestling this past weekend. There was a lot of it to tackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did you go out of your way to check out?
Oh, obviously Collision and Battle of the Belts because I did the post show with Kate, and then after that I caught about the second half of Battle in the Valley, so the last 3 matches.
That was a really, really great show. What would you say of the matches you saw? What was the match of the weekend that you saw?
I would probably say Okada Ospreay, yeah, and then followed maybe by Shingo and Moxley. But I also actually really enjoyed the street fight on Battle of the Belts as well.
They did like a pretty great job of like I saw like this weekend. I pretty much saw most of all the key stuff. I thought Moxley and Takagi was the match of the weekend. I put that even ahead of Okada and Ospreay. And really, I thought that Keno and Go Shiozaki, that I know not as many people are probably going to see, that might have been my number 2 match of the weekend. Like Ospreay and Okada was like 2 or 3 for me, which it was a pretty loaded weekend. That trios match on Collision with FTR and Daniel Garcia against the House of Black was phenomenal. The X Division 3-way at Hard to Kill, I thought was certainly the match of that show. And then, yeah, you have the street fight on Collision that, I mean, you and Kate went over it very, very well. I mean, it was sort of, it is like very bizarre to be watching like just the efforts that are going to like camouflaging this audience. And it's almost like it's turning into like this weird game, like of almost like outsmarting the audience, or maybe just, I mean, how much of the audiences are they even are really affected by it at this point. But regardless, like we're watching, like part of it is we're watching a match presentation, but the other half we're watching this sort of promotional manipulation of its audience to get a desired reaction, or at least temper a reaction that we don't want. And it's this bizarre viewing process.
Very much so. Yeah. I feel like the end result of that particular match probably went about as well as they could have hoped for, without having Jericho make a live appearance until the match really got underway. And by that point, maybe this crowd wasn't really going to react much at all anyway. But I think they did, like they had such a good match prior to that maybe that was already, consuming the crowd. Whatever. Like it's hard to say what the intent was, but I would say they left that show without controversy, I'll say.
Yeah. I was not looking forward to the 3-hour AEW block because I remember the last one and it just felt like it was so long, like the 3 hours. And that's what I was somewhat expecting on this one. But I've got to say that I thought Collision and this was one of the better Battle of the Belts, primarily for the street fight. But I didn't think the other two matches like wore out their welcome either. They were fine follow-ups, and the street fight, I mean, you would probably say like that. I mean, it's recency bias, but it might be like the most memorable match they've had on Battle of the Belts. It at least was the most involved and like high profile of a match when you are inserting a Jericho and having a match of that stipulation attached to it. That
Really the stunt they've ever had on a Battle of the Belts, I would say.
It seemed like Hobbs was a bit late to getting to Ricky Starks. And that was, I mean, there was no margin for error on that dive by Sammy Guevara. But yeah, I mean, in terms of a match itself, as you're grading it, I thought they did a really great job as well. On the TNA side, I guess the big news was Nick Nemeth showing up at the end of the night to attack Moose, who is now the new TNA heavyweight champion. We also got the arrival of Ash by Elegance, the former Dana Brooke, and those were the signings that Scott D'Amore, I think, could be the biggest signing in TNA history.
Was there one specific? I mean, we're assuming it was Nemeth that he was referring to, right?
Well, or they're going to play it up that Ash by Elegance is like the tongue-in-cheek, like greatest signing ever in TNA history.
Right. Okay.
I don't think it. I think it's better to go with that promise as a kind of a gag for a heel rather than position Nick Nemeth, who I, with due respect to the man, I wouldn't qualify as one of the top signings in TNA's history.
Honestly, as far as signings go, it was the New Japan show that I think had the most interest with the arrival of Jack Perry, also the announcement of Mustafa Ali joining the promotion as well.
That's right, and Jon Moxley challenging Tetsuya Naito. So that Windy City Riot show is happening April 12th. This is at the Wintrust Arena, so that is a significant like they drew about 2,100 people at the San Jose Civic Center on Saturday. Like Wintrust Arena, you're talking thousands and thousands more that this can seat. That I'm sure they're going to scale this appropriately, but they're at least throwing out like two pretty, like this is a very big match, and odds are this will be an IWGP title match once Naito gets through his challenges. But also Mustafa Ali and Hiromu Takahashi, which
amazing.
I mean, what a run this guy is on. So after doing GCW this past weekend, he's going to be at a Queen and Roncesvalles this week for Demand Lucha, and then he's off to Ottawa for C4 on Friday. And I believe C4's show is sold out on Friday. So Ali is look at this, the independent difference maker.
Taking full advantage of, getting out of the gate and attracting a good level of buzz. I mean, good for this guy. This is him busting his ass trying to, I think, build, first of all, build off of that hype, but hopefully to build more hype, for his impending appearances across various promotions. And I'm very excited that, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's very quietly, but like these New Japan strong, like US shows have really built, quite the sort of roster, that in many ways are more attractive than the New Japan Japanese, shows that I've seen. And this Windy City Riot show is no different. It feels like a big show.
Should he maybe call this the Retribution Tour?
Ooh.
Where he goes around and reclaims his cred.
Probably best not to remind people of that.
What did you think about the angle, how it was executed with Jack Perry jumping Shota Umino? This was after the opening trios match on the pay-per-view portion of Battle in the Valley, and our first appearance of Jack Perry since All In, and he's gone all in on this beard as well.
He sure has, yeah. I asked Hansi this on the show, but how close is he to I guess I don't know, 20-something Dylan McKay with this look?
Oh, his bank account has just been liquidated by the couple, Lucinda and the guy's husband, and or her husband. Yeah, so he's broke, and this is Jack Perry who's about to run into. He's got to get a Valerie Malone now.
Okay, I
by his
don't get
side.
any of those references, but I'm sure those of you who do
Yeah, a pot
appreciate it.
smoking Valerie Malone. That's what's maybe Anna Jay is going to be smoking some J in the
Oh,
Walsh house at the end of the season premiere.
my goodness.
So
I mean,
uh,
I thought it was a cool move, and it was an unexpected move. You know, for one thing, I feel like AEW would have had Jack Perry re-debut on their own show to maybe gain the most benefit of everything that came out of All In. Doing this as almost like a sort of temporary, delay before he finally returns to AEW is an interesting idea. Um, and I think it does a better job of teasing that he is actually not a part of the promotion than maybe what they tried with Eddie Kingston when he got really upset at AEW and decided to show up in ROH as a rebellious move, which nobody really bought.
I also like the fact that I don't think they have to go to the ends of the earth to try and convince people that he's really been fired by AEW. It's like no one needs to buy it, but I think people will be on board for understanding what this story is and be interested. And a cool thing that they have in their back pocket is he should be in some meaningful match at Windy City Riot, and that crowd in Chicago, perfect place for
Ooh,
him to really be this heel that you
yes.
want to like. He's still, I don't think, upon leaving AEW, or at least like back in the summer, like he was on his way there. But I think the idea here is that here is Jack Perry, that this is where he can go. Like he's growing out the beard, and it's sort of losing kind of like the boyish image of Jack Perry, and hopefully this gives him a more like hardened edge to him that New Japan, like this, it's this would be so lost in the shuffle, I feel, in AEW at the moment, nor would he have the automatic people to work with. That this is a good utilization of your partner, and send the guy somewhere else where, and then when he's ready you can use him in AEW.
Gives them a lot of potentially fresh matches as well, and high quality matches. Just even this initial program with Shota Umino um, seems like it could be really beneficial for both guys, and it's quite exciting. I really like this move for everybody.
Yeah, and just to mention, like the final two matches at Battle in the Valley were just like as we expected going in, tremendous. But dude, this no DQ match with Shingo Takagi and Jon Moxley. I know Okada Ospreay was your match of the weekend, and maybe I'm in more of the minority than some, but I thought this was just unbelievably great. Like the heat that they had, and it was just some of the near falls that they had, the just total like violent aura that both men brought to this. Like I thought like this was at points like delving into like that Swerve Hangman level back at Full Gear. It didn't quite reach that for me, but man, I just thought this was so laid out. It was so laid out well. And then when they gave the 25-minute warning, I could not believe we were 25 minutes into this match when they announced it. Like it was just a pure adrenaline rush for 26 minutes. And I really thought Tom Lawler had some great lines in here, including busting out the White Russian leg sweep when Shingo Takagi hit one into the guardrail. He was thinking on his feet pretty quick with that one.
I really like him as a commentator, actually. I in particular really liked him for Bloodsport. Like the rare at times I've actually heard him call some of those matches, and but even calling just a New Japan, straight up match like this one, I thought he said it great.
And then the Okada Ospreay match. I mean, this was like, this is our farewell match, and we don't know when we're gonna have a match again. And you got Ospreay kicking out of the Rainmaker, Okada kicking out of a Stormbreaker, and then when it got down to the near falls, I mean, this, you had so much story and history behind these two that was all leading up to this, and then just like a really simple but dramatic end with the wrist clutch, and then landing the landslide, and then just one final definitive Rainmaker to keep him down, and then the send off here with Ospreay essentially just putting over Okada as the greatest ever, and then shooting the angle with the War Dogs because you still have this cage match. And dude, I thought Ospreay's promo at the end was just excellent, like to sell people on this cage match that the backyard wrestler in me is coming out on February the 11th. So I just thought really like this was an excellent show, but these last two matches were just stellar, and with an awesome angle at the end to set up this cage match for February.
I think Kingston Gabe Kidd too, to me really impressed me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
was a match on paper that I wasn't necessarily expecting to be discussed as much as it was coming out of the show. But I really feel like Gabe Kidd, like even just from what I was watching of his in the G1, has really kind of like stepped up and has really made a name for himself just based off of this like very wild intensity, unpredictable intensity that I think meshed really well with Eddie Kingston in this brawl. So that's an anticipated rematch that they have too.
So there was a ton of great wrestling over the weekend, but man, was there a lot of it to keep up with.
And again, like I feel like this might feel unusual, but it's not going to be, John. Like this is going to be pretty
a rarity. Way we'll never get something like this again. I mean, with all these shows,
it feels like we might get one of these every 2 months.
What'd you think of Jim Miller winning his 26th UFC fight?
How much time do we have on this podcast?
Oh boy,
you can go 3 hours talking about
he's shooting his shot. He's fought at UFC 100, 200, and now he wants to fight at UFC 300 in April. And goddamn, this guy better get it after he's had 43 fights in the UFC, which is astounding.
What's the record?
He's got the record. That's it. He's just adding to his own
the timing is perfect. Coming off of a win, 3 months away from now, he's got to do 300, and then he could do 400.
At this point, wouldn't doubt it. He could go another 8 years. I think he'll be fine. So some unfortunate news coming out of NXT, and that was on Friday night. Cora Jade had a match with Lyra Valkyria, and Cora Jade got injured during the match, and some photos were circulating afterwards. And then Dave Meltzer reported today that it appears that she has a torn ACL. I did ask and was told like the torn ACL appears to be accurate. And I mean, typically with the torn ACL, that means surgery, and probably like timetable is usually 6 to 9 months. We don't know what her timetable is going to be, but if it's a full torn ACL, that's going to be obviously months and months. And she had just come back to TV in December, so she had already had a couple of months off and was just coming back and in this program with Gigi Dolan. So obviously a big setback for her, but that's another unfortunate injury happening at never a good time. But this is a time when there's a lot of momentum with the show, and she was a key part of the women's division.
Yeah, really unfortunate, especially like at such a young age. I wonder if like she's getting to the point now where they would consider having her just come back on the main roster, just because how much more she definitely like had more to achieve, like in NXT. But do you want to have her stay there for another year, after coming back through this long delay of this injury anyway? Or do you just want to re-debut her on the main roster, similar to like what they did with Indi?
Yeah, I think that it's like when you look at like it sort of feels like this powder keg at NXT where you're starting to see a lot of people getting ready, and it would seem Carmelo Hayes is kind of one foot out the door at this point, given his appearances on SmackDown. But they've been slow on it, a lot of them, to get them up there. Like no one bigger than Braun Breaker at this point, where I'm sure they have their timetable of when they're going to wrap things up with him. But man, that guy has overstayed. Like there's no more that is needed for him. But I think the key is we don't want to be in the past where we're just throwing a guy onto the main roster and he's lost and we don't have a reason for it. But then you're throwing so many people onto TV on a routine basis at NXT that those numbers fill up very quickly. And you have all these people who they might enjoy NXT, but it's a sizable financial difference being on the main roster.
Yeah, we're sort of especially now in January. There's really no point in bringing anybody up. I mean, other than maybe for the Rumble for a big appearance, but
you could get some surprises at the Rumble on the.
But can you see anybody showing up in the Rumble and then having a substantial role on a WrestleMania, for instance? No one is really gonna get that sort of spot until after Mania. So that's probably when you'll see a lot of this generation maybe get an actual role.
The Vince McMahon series on Netflix. We were speaking about Dave Meltzer. So he shared that on Sunday, he did his latest interview for this series. He said he's done a bunch of interviews for it and said he has been asked about every subject imaginable as it pertains to Vince McMahon, and that the release date, that it's coming sooner than people think, but couldn't share a release date yet. But it is coming. This is the Bill Simmons executively produced documentary series that will be on Netflix. And Vince McMahon obviously is going to be all over this thing as well. And just given the fact that, someone like a Dave Meltzer is not just part of this project, but it's a wide ranging list of topics. I mean, we will see what the finished product has, but I guess where is sort of your thought process on what kind of a expose on Vince McMahon we are going to see? And do you see this diving into more kind of hero worship with a bit of journalism in there, or are you thinking like that maybe this will be a more balanced look than maybe some would think with WWE involved?
Hearing Dave's, thoughts or at least his comments about his particular interviews where they seemingly asked him about everything, including, a lot of the controversies that took place recently, it gives me a lot of hope. But we also know that people can be asked about these things and have it not end up being in the edit. The fact that it's on Netflix gives me a bit more hope that it's going to be more honest, because I think there's going to be a lot more criticism on it. There's going to be a bigger microscope on something at that level, especially if you don't talk about the things that everybody wants to hear. But that said, like for instance, the Beckham documentary, I think was honest to a certain level, but even then there were certain controversies that I hear from actual, football fans that they didn't necessarily touch on. So I'm expecting honesty, but maybe not complete honesty and a deep dive the way you might see on like something like a Dark Side of the Ring or something.
Do you expect Vince, like to this point on the record, all we have gotten out of Vince McMahon was that appearance on CNBC after the announcement of the pending merger, when they went on, and it was very brief. Like, do you expect?
I do.
Could you imagine Vince McMahon not addressing in some meaningful way the allegations, or like I'm not expecting some like deep explanation of them, but like how much is broached with Vince McMahon when it comes to that?
I'm expecting sort of like, hey, I made mistakes, like that
It was
sort
a
of
different time.
that sort of thing. Yeah. That's about like, what would you expect?
Because that will
him to
come
say?
off very poorly if it is just considered like this is stuff that like this is not something where you can just, well, it was so many decades ago, I was young. No, this was happening,
Yeah.
over the last 10 years.
Right. Yeah. I'm expecting that level of response. I'm not expecting, like, if this was a Vince McMahon from 20 years ago, the response might be, these people are coming after me and I'm a victim. Like, that would be pretty. If he played the victim card now off of something like this, that would be pretty, enraging, and I think would be an awful look for everybody involved. But who knows, dude? It's Vince McMahon, I think, and I don't know how often we've seen him in these sort of situations, at least not recently. So, what are your expectations?
I mean, I'm open-minded to it. Like I don't like, obviously it comes with the responsibility of trying to, like, I guess I'm somewhat looking at this no different than I would maybe like the Von Erich movie, that I go in there understanding that there are going to probably be things that are going to be below my expectations, but I'm hoping for several surprises in terms of like who is spoken to. They have access to everyone, and that's good and bad. You're going to have people that are coming into essentially a WWE partnered documentary series that are going to be asked about Vince McMahon and are still going to have either a deference to Vince or a fear of stating the wrong thing. So I have very little faith in performers or people that have worked for Vince McMahon speaking kind of objectively or even necessarily feeling that way. Like those have been the biggest apologists when it comes to Vince McMahon.
Now, let's also remember this is covering his entire life and career, and therefore, as far as controversies go, it's not just the only sort of taboo isn't just going to be what's happened to him over the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. It's an entire lifetime of things, of offenses that I think he might, have to answer for, and to what depth, I guess,
I think it's going to be very
coverage
little way. Like I think they'll cover the steroid trial, which I mean, there's certainly a way that they will babyface themselves in that situation, and that will be sort of the victim card of the government coming after us. A ton on the Monday Night War, I'm sure, where again it will be Big Bad Ted Turner and his checkbook coming after us. The Attitude Era.
How about Owen?
I don't think Owen gets covered in it, to be honest. That would be my guess. I mean, it's multiple episodes. I can't say for sure. No.
I think there will be.
I don't think you. If
of
Benoit is not in it, I think Benoit will get criticism if that is omitted.
Yeah, Benoit might probably. I could see that being an omission, and maybe their excuse would just be, their decision to not recognize anything related to it at all. But I can see I can see Montreal, being talked about, and maybe as an addition to that, talking about Owen as well. But
here's
again,
the deal: it's like all these topics I mentioned. It's not even so much will they be brought up, or will they not be. It's how are they covered? Like, yes, they could bring up Benoit, and you can give a very simple. That is not a simple story. That is not a 10-minute discussion. Are they going to get into his TE ratio? Are they going to get into why he had a therapeutic use exemption? Highly doubtful. You know what I mean? But you can certainly couch it in a way like, here's someone that we saw no warning signs for, and it was like, listen, I'm not. Benoit's a whole different discussion, but it's like, they can certainly present it in such a way that is very simple and can be check it off the box. We covered Benoit, but I'm kind of looking at like what this is an ability to go into a lot of stories with access to people and the person that rarely you're going to get to speak about this. But like Vince McMahon,
how many episodes is this?
I don't know how many the exact number is, but it's
even if it's like a 10 episode, which I don't believe it is, but even if it's a 10 episode series, you could only get into so much depth for any of these massive topics that you could probably.
And a lot of it's going to be the celebration of Vince McMahon, the promoter. I mean, there is going to be a ton of that. And I think the idea of this will be to like this being sort of a positive look at his legacy while including some of the warts along the way. But like, I'd be stunned if the name Rita Chatterton comes up in this. Like how far in the weeds? Like I'd be very stunned by that. That would be shocking if that name came up, for instance.
Well, I'll certainly say, I think there's a lot more interest, obviously, in a project like this now than there was even when they initially announced it. Just given maybe the conclusion of the story that they seem to have now with the sale of the company to TKO and Vince seemingly taking a step away, and just all the other controversies, of course, attached to him as well. So, Dave says sooner than people think is when this will be released. So. That has to be this year. Then
go refresh Netflix. See, 5 episodes
right now.
Blue. We'll talk about a different streaming service. That's Peacock, who had a really big weekend because of the NFL playoff game that they had on Saturday night with the Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Dolphins. So Peacock paid $110 million for this one game for the national rights to the game, and it was going to air on the local affiliates in Kansas City and Miami, but for the country, essentially, if you were not in those markets, you needed to buy Peacock and subscribe to get it. And this led to tons of revolt from media members to fans. Like, how dare you ask us to pay for this streaming service? But I mean, this is just like, this is where business is going. And this was a huge amount that they paid for it. And it looks like it paid off. They did a massive audience for this. They put out figures today of an average of 23 million viewers for the broadcast. Now, let's remind people that the last disclosed number we got from Peacock was 28 million subscribers. That was back at the end of the third quarter of last year. So they had 23 million was the average watching this game and peaked at over 24. So you can just think in your head how many new signups were there over this last week for Peacock. It was like by far, it's their highest number they've ever been at. And for those people that were signing up for this game, they have now got Peacock for at least a month. And that is going to put the Royal Rumble in that many more homes for these people to be able to have access to. And if there's one thing we have seen is that we have seen the increase in viewership for these PLEs when Peacock at the same rate is increasing its number of homes. So excluding that year that the Rumble was on the USA Network in 1988, this is going to be the most access that the Royal Rumble has had in terms of homes, and comes at a time when like that's really advantageous for WWE to benefit from this, of people that have Peacock. And if you're someone that has just picked up Peacock, if there's one event that might get your curiosity, the Royal Rumble is pretty high up there that they're going to have access to that they wouldn't normally.
Do you know of any perhaps cross-promotional efforts during this football game, maybe for the rest of Peacock's catalog, including Rumble?
Just
Wouldn't that
that
have made sense?
they weren't promoting a whole lot of WWE at all on the football game. But regardless, it's still people with access to Peacock. And I think
Mm.
at the very least, it's people that are going to be on Peacock. And hey, it's in 2 weeks' time. You've got access to the Royal Rumble. So I do think it will mean something for already. I think this was going to be the most watched Royal Rumble ever, especially on Peacock. And now you've got, like, we don't even know what the updated number is, but I guarantee it's well above 28 million at this
We'll
point.
find out
So,
if it's in a press release.
well, maybe now that we have like a 23 million number out as a comparison point, I think that all but guarantees WWE will never be releasing these specific numbers in comparison to what the NFL is drawing. The UFC has postponed its card in Saudi Arabia. This was reported by Ariel Helwani on Monday's MMA Hour. So they were supposed to go on March 2nd for a fight night event. And Helwani stated that it's going to be postponed, most likely taking place in June. And it comes down to that the people paying for the show, and this was a $20 million price tag that they paid for this fight night card. The card that was getting put together was not quite up to par of what they were expecting. So they're going to retool and go to June. Like, this is not a logistical issue. This is just the card is not shaping up to be what they wanted. So it's very interesting when you look at that and think about, like, when you look at how important these Saudi Arabia cards are for WWE and why they load them up with all your key talent, like, they are being paid more than double what this UFC fight night is getting being paid for. But it's just interesting to watch that in this era of these exorbitant amounts being spent for content, that here's, in theory, some pushback from the people paying for this, that this is not just going to be like your rank and file fight night card that we're spending $20 million on. We want a card of sufficient star power. Like, the biggest star that they had, if you want it was like it was one of their flyweights that it was like not going to like carry this card, and they had not announced the main event yet for this card. But I mean, just interesting that it didn't quite.
Are we gonna see Yokozuna show up on this fight night?
He would have to get down to 265, and that would have been really tough. I mean, there were several issues preventing Rodney Anawahi from being booked for the Saudi Arabia card.
That is very interesting. I mean, in my mind, I didn't even know if, like, at least as it relates to the WWE offerings, I didn't even know if, like, the Saudis had any real opinions about, like, who was going to be on these shows, other than maybe having a Yokozuna, show up or something ridiculous like that. But clearly, I guess somebody is paying attention, and somebody within that system knows when a card is weak, and I guess for 20 million, they were expecting better.
Yeah. The UFC has not officially announced this yet, nor do I expect them to reveal that reason. I'm sure there will be some other thing attached to it. But yeah, they had Muhammad Mokaev was the name here. He was fighting Alex Perez. And like, Mokaev is like a really solid, undefeated flyweight that'll probably be fighting for a title, but not someone that's carrying a card like this. I mean, Ayman Zahabi might have been like one of the biggest names on this card. So that was
Wow.
and Eric Anders. So like this, the fights they had announced here, I mean, this was just another fight night and was not going to be at the level of, for a $20 million card. So probably June is what they're looking at. The gift that keeps on giving, the discovery process in the UFC antitrust suit, it revealed this text message exchange between Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta. So this was uncovered by MMA Fighting, and this goes back to May of 2014. So at this time, John Jones is coming off his win over Alexander Gustafsson and then had just beaten Glover Teixeira, and they're trying to get Jones to fight Gustafsson in the rematch. And part of their negotiations, I guess they weren't going smoothly, because in May of 2014, Dana White texts his buddy Lorenzo, "What's up with Jones? Did he straighten up, or is he still being a scumbag?" Lorenzo, "Still a douche, but we're inching closer. Haven't moved on money, but sent the letter with an ultimatum." Which sounds great for an antitrust lawsuit. "Haven't moved on money, but sent the letter with an ultimatum." White's response, "Awesome. Fuck that punk, Lorenzo. He needs to know we don't need him, or he will fuck us over more than he already does." Now, Dana White was interviewed by the plaintiff's lawyer in the lead up to this case, and that was also part of the documents that were disclosed. And White explained he was talking about him being a scumbag in life, not in the negotiations. He says, I mean, you could get pretty much every guy who works for me to testify that, yes, I was not happy with John Jones' life choices. And that's what he was meaning. A scumbag in life. That really cushions the blow of what's always been a very...
like a concerned parent.
Yeah, he's not a scumbag in the negotiations. He's a scumbag in life. Let me just, for the record here. So a wonderful relationship between Dana White and John Jones, at least at this time. Don't know what the current state of it is or after this text exchange was released. But boy, I'm sure they're loving this discovery process.
Yeah.
April 8th is the proposed trial date to start, unless there is some settlement or delay.
Okay, so does somebody have access to every text message that has been sent by?
Not everyone. I mean, the documents that have been released, like some stuff has been like redacted, but
somebody out there is going through every text message that Dana has ever sent.
I mean, there's a fair amount of it after. I mean, whatever they had to turn over, they had to turn over. Wow. I mean, could you imagine Dana White having to hand over like texts and for this process? Like this lawsuit, as much as they may want to like downplay, like it's got to be the ultimate pain in the ass to have to be dealing with. And if this trial starts as it's supposed to on April 8th, that's the beginning of fight week for UFC 300, both happening in Vegas, which is unreal. Right. So
very exciting.
There you have it. And we'll finish off with the lineups for the next two nights. Tuesday, NXT, we have got a battle royal for the next title shot against Lyra Valkyria. The title shot, the battle royal, the final four are going to have a fatal four-way match, and the winner of that will advance to Vengeance Day next month in Tennessee to challenge Valkyria. On this show, Valkyria and Tatum Paxley will take on Lola Vice and Elektra Lopez. And then Idris Enofe and Malik Blade are still advertised to take on Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes. I guess if there's any issue with Carmelo Hayes, that will get explained. But we haven't gotten anything beyond what the WWE put out on Friday night about him and Austin Theory.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see tomorrow.
And then Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde against Andre Chase and Duke Hudson. Dynamite on Wednesday, it's Samoa Joe and Hook for the AEW title, Christian Cage and Dustin Rhodes for the TNT title, and Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony defending the ROH six-man titles against Jay White and the Guns, along with an appearance by the Young Bucks. So that's happening in North Charleston on Wednesday night.
Fantastic.
Joe and Hook, are you expecting a big outing here for Hook?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I wonder how much like suplexing they'll allow Hook to get on Samoa Joe. You know, it's one thing to have Hook throw KM around, several times on Dynamite, but man, Joe is somebody that I think they're going to make Hook work a little bit more. This is probably the closest we'll ever get to Taz versus Samoa Joe. As far as I know, I don't think we ever saw that one. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. Controversy or not.
Well, on that note, I've been told I'm getting the Hook. And on the other side, we will be reviewing Raw.
It is 2024, and tracking technology from advertisers, ISPs, and hackers is getting more sophisticated than many of us can understand. Something you can do to give yourself a bit more peace of mind this year is to protect your browsing by investing in a trusted VPN like NordVPN. Voted Best VPN for Privacy of 2023 by Security.org, Nord is one of the most established and reputable VPN providers in the field. NordVPN is also something I use every day to access geo-blocked online streaming services like AEW+. By far the best way of watching AEW programming commercial-free with on-demand access to AEW's entire TV archive. But perhaps the most value I've gained from using Nord has been the ability to unlock cheaper prices to online content from other parts of the world. Plus, when you sign up at nordvpn.com/postwrestling, you get 4 bonus months on top of all 2-year plans. That works out to $2.88 a month, so it's already paid for itself several times over. Again, $2.88 a month when you sign up at nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Check the link in the show description. Sign up with code postwrestling, get yourself some bonus months, and let NordVPN know you found them through us. Very well done, John.
Oh, I'm on top of things, Way. I am. You know what I started over the weekend? I finally I got Apple TV Plus, and I'm watching Killers of the Flower Moon, the Scorsese film. So I have sat through it Well, I have had 2 sittings so far, and I still have just over an hour left to go. There is not a prayer I could have watched this in one sitting in a movie theater. It's 3 hours and like 20 some odd minutes.
You're watching this like it's a series, you know?
Kind of like I'm breaking it up into like 90-minute chunks. It's really good. I'm enjoying it a lot, but man, it is like that is testing the limits of
So how do you
long
know stop? Do you just stop when you have other things to do, or do you just say, I'm gonna wait until this scene ends? How do you limit?
Well, tonight it was this is the latest I can start Raw, and that was my break.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I've got Raw down to a science.
That's your kickoff to Raw, Scorsese.
Yeah, what a lead in.
Amazing. Okay.
Well, tonight's Raw was in North Little Rock, Arkansas, even though the North was just thrown out here. At the Simmons Bank Arena, WrestleTips reporting over 6,100 tickets out, and we get a big shot of the snow outside of the Simmons Bank Arena. It was cold in Arkansas on Monday night.
It was some, production assistant's job to pile all the snow out right in front of the sign just to get the shot, just to
Great
let us
job,
know.
if you can have
Yeah.
it. And tonight was the show where they were up against not just the NFL playoffs, but you had the Iowa caucus going on that I'm sure Wai was double screening. And this Raw, I mean, this football game, last year's football game, the playoff game did over 30 million viewers. So that's like the ballpark of what they could be up against on top of the news coverage tonight. So really tough night for Raw, but we will see how it holds up. And Cody Rhodes comes out to start the show and starts to talk about the Royal Rumble coming up and why he came back to WWE, but he's cut off by Drew McIntyre. And he states how both grew up in WWE. They took similar career paths. And you know what, Cody, I'm proud of you. You know, we once held the tag titles together. It's like, you did? I'll take his word for it. And he says, do you remember our name? He's like, the Dashing Ones. I'm like, okay, I believe him. This is such a blur to me.
They were kind of making fun of it, like Drew was like, yeah, it's true. Google it, like what a weird trivia note. And maybe it just kind of tells you how, I don't know, irrelevant, the tag titles were maybe in that period. And Cody himself felt like a tad of embarrassment even saying this name, but it was a really fun little callback, making
Remember when I was the chosen one and you were Dashing? So together we were the Dashing Ones.
I like Dashing Cody Rhodes.
He said both men had to leave WWE to succeed, and they redefined what it meant to work on the outside, and then you get the call back from WWE to return, and said that my last match before coming back here was against you, Cody, and you called me a future world champion. And he says that, Cody, you are going to finish your story, but not before I finish mine. Cody mentions all the different people in the Rumble that could win. You can't count anyone out. And Drew, he says that Drew cuts him off, stating, Cody, I wish you'd just be more like yourself. You don't have to be wearing these suits, using all these big words. You're not running for office and all this smiling. I used to do all this same stuff. And Cody says, this is not an act. I smile because I love this. I made my opportunities and I'm grateful, unlike you who just complains. And Drew proceeds to complain about Cody bringing Jay over to Raw, endorsing CM Punk, even though he knows his history, and says that, Cody, you are standing in my way. No one can stop me. And Cody says, I'm going to give you something to complain about at the Rumble. And regarding our last match that we had before you came back here, who won on that night? At What Culture Pro Wrestling?
Well, did not mention that, but that would have been something, right?
That's right.
If it was AEW, I wonder if they would have even brought it up, honestly. But I thought this was a very good segment and continues a string of really excellent Drew McIntyre promo segments. I mean, he does feel he's not a main character, but he's really approaching that level of status, and certainly to me feels like somebody I'm talking about all the time, no matter what part of the show he's on. And they teased another really interesting pairing here for Drew with Cody Rhodes. Now, this to me felt more like a Rumble tease rather than an individual match tease. And now maybe we can retroactively even look at the CM Punk Drew McIntyre tease and ask, was that a tease for a match itself, or was it just more build for a Rumble? Nonetheless, these are programs you can get to in singles capacities at any point. and I'm sure they'll have, interesting interactions within the Rumble themselves. So in that sense, I thought it was a very successful build for the Rumble match itself. Drew continues to impress me because I don't think he ever cuts the same promo twice. In every sort of relationship he has with the different member of the roster, he finds a different sort of relationship. And with Cody, it's he's almost trying to pander to Cody here, where he's trying to talk him up, saying we have very similar career path. You should be on my side, essentially. Not unlike what I thought CM Punk was trying to do to Drew last week in trying to say, hey, I left the company, so did you. Why are you mad at me? Except in this scenario, I thought it worked a lot better for Drew because he's a heel and therefore pandering feels a lot more natural for a heel to do. I thought Cody, though, returned the volley in a much more sort of authentic and successful way than CM Punk did last week, in my opinion. Cody basically said, yes, we are similar in the way we left, but that's where sort of our similarities end. I am grateful for my second chances while you've done nothing but complain about yours, which I thought was just a wonderful retort that I think matches up completely with their character histories. I had no problems leaving this segment feeling like Cody was the baby face and Drew was the total heel here. Unlike many of Drew's other interactions in the past, where I think Drew makes such a good point sometimes that I'm left feeling a bit more sympathetic to him than, let's say a CM Punk. But I also love beyond that the sort of references to the past, whether it be with the dashing ones or their history outside of the WWE, which this felt almost like one of the more blatant sort of references to a match taking place outside of this company as being something significant, so it maybe you can chalk that up to part of the philosophical change as well. But I thought a very good segment. What about you?
I would say to you that to me, Drew does feel like a main player on Raw. And I would go so far as to say, I think he is like a dark horse that could end up winning this Rumble. Because I think the idea of Rollins and Punk being your guaranteed one-on-one match at Mania, I think you have to leave it for the caveat of Drew being involved in this. I mean,
in a three capacity?
Yes, in some form. Yes. Now you still have the question of his contract that is up in the air, what the details of that are. But I mean, he's certainly being treated like a guy that isn't going away anytime soon. And it would not stun me to see this guy being like a dark horse pick that is up there with your Punk or your Cody to win this Rumble. They've done at least a viable job that there is a reasonable path to victory that you could see him being in the title picture for WrestleMania.
They obviously have done 3 ways for, a WrestleMania title main event. I feel like a Punk Rollins straight match, if you're going to have those two involved in the title picture, it feels so much more attractive than, as good as Drew is, maybe injecting him into the story. But you do have to ask, what is the direction for Drew? If, if Punk at this point is going to be taken up, Rollins is going to be taken up, Cody.
And do you want a heel dynamic in there that Drew brings to that equation?
That would, I guess, be beneficial for both Rollins and Punk. But now, if not that scenario, what do you see for Drew at Mania?
I mean, if he is out of the title picture, I mean, it kind of derails him from what his whole story has been about trying to get back to this title. So, I mean,
but he's already failed.
It would have to be someone that he blames for eliminating him from the Rumble. You're talking about someone that's just coming out of left field. Gunther doesn't seem a direction for him given this character now.
They've kind of already done Sammy and Jay, but they can always reheat those back up. Jay sort of is like the big opponent for him, but I was kind of surprised they just did that match on TV.
And you do have the story of Drew taking out Sammy backstage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Only Sammy did come back at the house show, which we promoted on television, and then got the staples. So,
well, if he never got hurt, maybe he would have never had those staples.
Okay. R-Truth is in the back selling bootleg Judgment Day shirts with his name attached at the bottom. And Priest tells him to stop selling this. It's like
he should complain to WWEshop.com, where I believe this is one of the hottest sellers of the week. So well, I don't know how bootleg they are. WWE Shop is getting in on the game.
Do you think Judgment Day is getting this level of royalties that Truth was scoring here with these bootleg shirts?
What do you mean? Like in story or what?
I mean, I don't know if I think he's taking a bigger cut here of the profits on this than probably he would be getting in his royalty check for what you get on being the 5th name on a t-shirt.
I don't know. Well, we don't know exactly how much money he handed to Damian Priest here.
Well, Priest sees the money, and I love like this ongoing like thought, like these guys are just like they're mesmerized by like a couple $100. They're like, oh my god.
This didn't look like a couple $100 to me, John. Like this looked like a stack of 100s. Okay, this might probably at least like $5,000 in this.
Okay, well,
which makes me wonder like exactly how much business Drew was or Truth was doing out in the parking lot. If he's able to make like theoretically, I don't know, 20 G's off of these t-shirts.
Yeah, why is he wrestling then at this point? Just sell merch.
Oh God, yeah.
It's cold out tonight to be hustling and selling these shirts.
That's why
so Priest sees the money and he says, okay, we'll keep selling them, but just don't be too loud and don't tag into the match tonight when Truth and Miz take on Priest and Balor. And Truth is thinking this is all a plan, and he's like speaking in code, so he gives Drew or he gives Priest a wink here.
Yeah. Setting up a potential interesting interaction for the match tonight. They're focusing more now on Truth and Priest's specific relationship, and they're showing Priest warming up to to Truth a little bit, mainly through money here. But I do like how honorable like they show Truth in something like this. Yes, he's kind of like, infiltrating his way into the group, but he seems to really believe that the group is his family, even cutting, equal portions, you would think, to every member of the group except for JD, of course. So it's going to open up, I think, that much more heartbreak whenever they do turn on him in a full way. Maybe opening the way for a babyface like Damian Priest to save the day.
Nothing but like a little embezzlement in your baby faces and then extortion to buy loyalty out of your friends.
I mean, it tends to be how it works. Yes.
Dominik and JD McDonagh against DIY. You want to know your definitive proof that Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn are not being heard anywhere among Michael Cole? Notes, bit of a light crowd tonight due to the snow.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I was surprised by that because it didn't look any different to me than usual. They dressed up the crowd really well and they darkened the right areas that I didn't notice any difference.
Yeah, and they were making again, it was like 61 out, but I mean, you could imagine like a portion of that not even showing up depending on how bad it was out, which I mean, it was similar weather to what we have here. So I mean, it's not like people were handicapped by traveling.
So did they have more snow though? Like, was there bigger snowfall?
I mean, there was snow. Obviously, like it affected some because they were. I saw some pictures. Like they got like a pretty big snowfall.
Right. Well, maybe they're less equipped for it. They're just not as tough as we are.
That's it. So Ciampa and Gargano are taking on Mysterio and JD McDonagh, and they get the heat on Gargano for a long period of time. He makes the tag, but the referee doesn't see it, so they continue to wear down Gargano until he lands a slingshot spear, and they go to the commercial break, and we get the hot tag during the commercial break. So we come back, and Ciampa's in the ring after all of that selling, and
it felt mistimed to me. They don't usually do this,
Yeah, this was a rarity. So. There's a double team powerbomb back suplex onto Dominik. JD's making the save, and then JD hits a top rope moonsault to Ciampa, but gets super kicked by Gargano, breaking up the cover. Gargano holds 619 from being hit by Dominik, and then is nailed with a knee from Ciampa, sending him to the floor, and then it's meet in the middle onto McDonagh, and they win in 18 minutes and 14 seconds, 2 commercial breaks during this match.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good tag team match. I thought JD and Dominik were great in the match. Every heel trick they were attempting seemed to work really well with the crowd. And DIY, to me, this was the most NXT level that I feel like I've seen them as a tag team on the main roster. They had the crowd with them. They had a great pace and of action, and it felt strong, and they felt like it, an actual top tag team for once. And maybe it helped that it was so early on in the show, because this card certainly had the energy for a long match.
Yeah, they got a lot of time, and that's where DIY is going to shine. So they're at least trying to build them up for at at the least a television title match with the Judgment Day at some point. Earlier today, Indi, Hartwell, and Candice LeRae met with Adam Pearce to inform them it's our year. And Piper and Chelsea come in, and Green complains about referee Eddie Orango counting too slow last week and wants a rematch. But Pearce says that was your rematch. You blew it, so you can face Indi and Candice tonight. And that's what we have got coming up next. And there is a video on Candice LeRae and Indi Hartwell, just to remind you who these two are. They won the tag titles in NXT, but it's a different story on Raw, they note. But we've made changes, and this year, we're doing it our way. We're doing it ourselves.
Yes. Combining sort of like the everything. Our way. Do it. Yes.
So the referee is Eddie Orango. So this is like Brock Lesnar getting Steve Mazzagatti. This was,
luck of the draw.
It's just how it works.
I thought it would play into the finish. I guess maybe they can make some complaint about the referee.
Perhaps they'll have something here. Although I didn't sense anything. Green came in and hit a code breaker, and then this is after Candice hit a bunch of sentons to Piper Niven, and then Niven slams Hartwell. Green comes from behind, tries the unprettier, which is blocked, and then Indi holds Green for a cabrata from Candice LeRae, who looked like she nailed Indi coming down here, and they win in 3.5 minutes, and this is their year. Indi Hartwell and Candice LeRae, 1-0.
Well, that's how you start, right? I thought the crowd was pretty dead for this one, and I don't think there's enough interest really in anybody outside of really anybody. You know, maybe I was gonna say outside of like Chance and Carter. Last week's match, like with Chance and Carter versus Piper and Chelsea, like had a really good reaction, but none of the women's tag team matches tonight I thought received really that great of a connection with the audience, and it required, I think, these matches to maybe be that much more impressive to grab hold of the audience, and neither of them were at that level, unfortunately. I still have a lot of doubts about Indi Hartwell being like capable of like delivering at this level, because I did still sense a bit of sloppiness in the match tonight. So
How many tag teams can we send to a coffee shop to have coffee together to get further definition to their characters and chemistry? Can all of the women's tag teams go out for coffee like Butch and Pete Dunne, or Butch and Tyler Bate?
I guess it depends on like what character is within the performers, you know, like maybe a coffee shop can unlock it, but if there's really nothing there, then they can't really do it.
You can tell a lot by the type of beverage someone orders at a cafe.
Yes.
Then there's a video for Nia Jax proclaiming this to be her division. We cut to Judgment Day. Ripley's pissed, and she has to go address my division. So Priest walks in. He spoke to Adam Pearce about Drew running his mouth, and JD wants to beat up R-Truth, but Priest tells him, maybe you should focus on what happened tonight so that doesn't happen again. Balor says, are you defending R-Truth? He's like, I'm not, but says that he at least earns for the crew and shows the money that he got from R-Truth. JD asks, do I get a cut? Priest says, no, you're an independent contractor and your name isn't on the shirt, and tells Balor they got to focus on their tag match tonight.
Continuing to, I guess, make JD hate Truth that much more, and maybe even sowing some seeds of dissent here between Priest and the rest of the group.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, dude, this introduction for Gunther was the best Ludwig Kaiser of all time. Like, he's waited 3 weeks for this one. It was tremendous. I mean, these two should never be separated. No matter what teases they do, Gunther without Kaiser, it's just, it would be such a drop-off.
Have you seen this photo of the two of them this young?
I have not seen this. Oh my goodness.
Like, these two are like, so I for people watching on video, I just pulled up a photo of the two of them with what, like, it looks like they're teenagers here. You know, I didn't know this relationship went this far back.
But... Yeah, dude. Walter had some interesting like hair choices when he was younger. Look at him.
Suits him.
The ring general.
Yes.
This is like Conor McGregor meeting Chuck Liddell, and Chuck looking scared for his life. Have you ever seen that one?
I have not. actually.
Oh boy, if you care to peruse. So Gunther comes out. He detects desperation around here with the Royal Rumble coming up. And he sees everyone arguing over who's going to win the Rumble. But he's here to remind everyone that I entered number 1 last year and I made it all the way till the end. I was 1 elimination away from winning. And the whole crowd starts chanting Cody. He says, I lasted longer than anyone in history. This year I'm going to win it and headline WrestleMania. And then he congratulates Kaiser for taking out Kofi last week. It's a side he's wanted to see. And out comes Xavier Woods. He's got a problem with Kaiser, challenges him to a match. And that's what we've got here. He's coming for, Kaiser says he's coming for Woods' head. So we get Ludwig Kaiser versus Xavier Woods with his head at stake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good enough setup.
Anytime you have a match for a head, I mean, everybody wants it.
Well, this was much better than Al Snow and Scorpio teaming up in 1998. Kaiser is in control, and Woods runs his shoulder into the post, and then Woods hits a spinning DDT into the ring, fires up with chops, does get the crowd behind him, and then he sends Kaiser to the floor, drop kick through the ropes, and sends Kaiser over the desk, and we get the return of the office chair, which Woods has scouted. He ducks the office chair, and then he takes the chair, drops it onto Kaiser. This is a DQ. So throwing it at a man's face, that is not grounds for a DQ because he missed. He ducked. So intent is not going to get you disqualified. Only violence.
You can bring a pistol to a match. If you shoot somebody and you manage to miss, then match continues.
It's not. What's this attempted murder? No, it's one or the other. And so the DQ is called in 10.5 minutes. Can't say this had the reaction of Gabe Kidd and Eddie Kingston being left without a winner. But Woods grabs a chair and drop kicks it into Kaiser's face. And then Woods ends up getting placed into the steps. So we get the idea that he's going to do the same attack he did on Kofi, but this time Woods stops him, grabs the steps, misses Kaiser, and Kaiser runs away from Woods.
Well, maybe not the same sort of feeling as Kidd versus Kingston, but I thought this turned out really well. This, for one thing, was some of the most fire I've seen out of a New Day member in a long time. At some point in this match, Xavier Woods gets his mouth or lip busted, and it just added to this wonderful shot of him, mouth full of blood, hair just like going crazy, and him just losing it on this guy who tried to, take his friend out in Xavier in Kofi Kingston. So I thought it was like a nice little turn in the story where, the chain of events is Vinci gets hurt by Kofi by accident, which drives Kaiser to go insane by throwing chairs at Kofi and taking Kofi out. And that in turn drives Woods insane. And he nearly takes Kaiser out. So violence begets more violence, everybody. That is the story here. Office chairs begets more office chairs. But as a way to spark somebody like an Xavier Woods into, I don't know, like a heightened level of intensity and aggression, which I've been waiting for the long day or waiting for the New Day for years now. I thought this resulted in a positive turn for everybody.
Maybe this will lead to opposite day where New Day has to come out as Imperium and Imperium as New Day.
I could do without dress up from the New Day for a while. Seriously.
What about they call it Old Day?
I could do without any sort of silliness from the New Day. We've been waiting. We've been waiting for them to get serious for a long time.
Give Gunther that trombone.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then we had the most interesting promo on the show. We go to Bronson Reed. He says, someone's title is going to belong to me sooner than later. That was it. Not what, could be any title. It could be anywhere. It could be any person. God knows what he's going for here. And this was and he got a suit and a chain for all this, did up his hair, and he got 5 seconds here. What's your mission statement? Someone's title will be mine.
Who could he be possibly going for, I guess, is what you're left wondering. I would suggest the
Cheez-It title that AJ Francis has been walking around with.
That would be quite the unexpected challenge. Now, just logically speaking, there's only one baby face that's holding a singles championship that we can expect him to go for, and that would be Rollins. I don't expect him to go. He could go for Gunther, could go for Roman, I suppose, could go for Logan Paul, but those seem far less likely.
Yeah, I would say probably unlikely. You have to imagine, like, could they be building up for something for him at Elimination Chamber in
Yeah.
in Australia? Like, it would make sense that he would have a pretty prominent role on that show, but it
Mhm.
would be a leap to imagine him and Rollins on that show. But I would think he's going to be figured prominently.
Chamber would make sense. Yeah.
Then we had Saxton with Xavier Woods, and he gets attacked by Kaiser again, but this time Jey Uso interjects, and Jey Uso just has nothing going on until we get to the Royal Rumble. So it's just he's around. He's an extra hand to, a babyface gets attacked. I'm there to help.
Well, I mean,
he has
he
some history here with Woods.
Yeah, just like he, kind of defended Kofi. Didn't defend him well enough, evidently last week, but he does have history with Woods, and I do like at least that they're giving him something to do before the Rumble. I mean, Cody like even brought Jay up as somebody who's an actual candidate to win the Rumble, and I'm like, have you been watching Raw? Jay has nothing. He's had no real storyline whatsoever. What chance do you think he has? So this is something at least.
You should be the voice in Drew's head to give him his comeback lines.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was time for Akira Tozawa against Ivar. So Ivar immediately drops Tozawa and yells, "You're a little man. I told you." And then he starts pie facing him in the corner. Tozawa comes back with a spinning roundhouse kick, and then a pop-up is turned into a DDT. Tozawa tears off his shirt, runs into a spinning slam, and then as Ivar climbs for the doom salt, Maxine gets onto the apron to distract Ivar, and it leads to a sunset bomb by Tozawa, who pins Ivar in 2 minutes. Afterward, Valhalla attacks Maxine, just runs her over. Ivar lands a spin kick on Tozawa and then hits the doom salt.
Crowd reacted pretty big for this upset win here, and for like a 5-minute undercard program, I thought it was fine.
2 minutes. Let's not give them too much.
2 minutes. I'm sorry. So Tozawa beats Ivar to set up Gable versus Ivar.
Well, Ivar's beaten Otis, lost to Tozawa, so now this is the rubber match.
And then what does he try to get the win back from Tozawa at the end at WrestleMania?
No, then he'll face Maxine. I think we are building to maybe like a mixed tag match at some point.
Then he'll face. Okay, so you think, yeah, not a
Ivar and
match.
Maxine would be that would be
something. I'd love to see a Japanese Ocean Cycle and suplex on Ivar.
We haven't seen Maxine since the Rhea Ripley match, so she's got
your worst match of the year.
She's got her comeback coming. So it's announced that next week CM Punk is coming to Raw, and he's challenging Cody to meet him face to face, or at least respond to his story on Instagram. And that's coming up next week. The main event, face to face.
CM Punk and his Instagram stories, like what a tool he has not used in quite a bit to build to a feud. And this one that we're actually going to maybe even see a payoff to.
He attached a song to this. He attached Midnight Rider.
Oh, okay.
As well. He's clever.
Good on.
Alpha Academy is with the Creeds. They're all concerned about Tozawa. Ivy Nile walks in. She's going to speak to Pierce. Valhalla will pay for this. And then Gable calls Ivar a coward. Next week, he's going to teach him a lesson. Rhea Ripley walks out. She is sick and tired of people like Nia running her mouth, claiming this is her division. It's my division, my title. And she warns any winner of the Rumble not to waste. She said not to waste their WrestleMania choosing her. It definitely seemed like she just had a brain freeze here, but it ended here. Essentially, don't waste your shot on me. Go for the SmackDown champion. Becky Lynch comes down and explains that we are two different people with similar paths from foreign countries that came here to be the best. We were afterthoughts after a WrestleMania, but then we came back to win titles at the event. The difference is I headlined WrestleMania, but you and I are the two very best to do it. But I have this voice in my head that keeps stating that you might be better than me. And I need to prove that you're not. And therefore, I have to take your title. And to do that, I have to win the Rumble. And Ripley just responds, the only person that wants you to win the Rumble more than you is me. I'll see you at WrestleMania. And with that, they said, we're canceling the Women's Rumble. We're just going to go towards this now. We're going to save everyone weeks. And we're just going to announce this now for night one.
They pretty much did this, right? I mean, it's one thing for like, a challenger to say, I'm going to win the Rumble and I'm going to see you at WrestleMania. It's another for like the champion in the same segment to say, yeah, you will see me at WrestleMania. I'm going to see you there too. So, it would be another thing, I think, if they set up, I think a viable challenger from anybody else, but I
They
would
do
say
have Nia. Like, it was not like Nia is kind of the background player here, that Becky does need to get that win back sometime before now and Mania.
Well, that was the other thing too, but I just think it's a different level when you have an in-ring interaction with the champion and the champion saying, "I'm gonna see you at WrestleMania." Like,
It
how
was a
does
great segment, and it's the match that I mean, this I thought they set this up really well. We could have done this in like 3 weeks time, but
Yeah.
we're doing it now.
But it's okay. But I think the Nia timing kind of maybe makes Becky's argument a little bit flawed to me too. Like, she's here saying how, you and I are
We're
the
the
two
two best. Yeah.
when Nia has clearly like bested you, Becky, and Becky's only consolation is that she didn't go to the hospital this time after losing to Nia and being busted up. So it kind of I think she needed to at least address the Nia loss in a way that made it feel like it was her path to proving that she could be better than Rhea Ripley here. This just seemed to almost like ignore it completely.
This will be like if Israel Adesanya gets into the cage and Dricus du Plessis wins on Saturday, and we're just gonna overlook the fact that Adesanya, man, you just got shut out by Sean Strickland in your last fight. So there's
Exactly.
that.
Yes.
I know that's what you were thinking. But this was a good segment. I maybe like this did feel like a segment that should be following like the last obstacle in Becky's way being cleared, and now it's a clear path to Mania. But nonetheless, I thought it was a good promo. Jackie Redmond interviews Seth Rollins. Dude was like breathing like heavy here. Like Jackie even said, I can see your breath. It is very cold out here. I was like, were they filming this in like outside? Like, where were they? Is there no like heating in the Simmons Bank Arena?
I'm simply guessing it was that cold in the backstage area.
We missed it earlier. They did the arrivals of Jinder and Seth, and the first time that we saw Rue, their child, on television. At least I do not recall seeing at least a focused upon shot like this.
Same, yeah. To my knowledge, certainly. So I think building for WrestleMania 60 starts now.
WrestleMania 60. Okay, yeah. Could see it happening. NIL. So Seth says this is not the same Jinder Mahal that he beat to become the NXT champion. This is the best version of Jinder Mahal and a deserving version. It's like, wait a minute. Last week, the guy claimed he was overlooked, and your response was, you're overlooked on purpose because we're trying to forget about you after The Rock put your balls in a vice. But this week, he is now the greatest version of Jinder Mahal. This is a mega match. I mean,
it was ridiculous.
Tell me Tony Khan booked this shift without telling me.
I mean, it was a bad promo from Rollins, like, pure and simple. I mean, I think you could tell Seth didn't even believe in his own words here, because he just, to me, felt like he was relying on his shtick and catchphrases to get through the segment without necessarily having good justification for the actual question.
I think that's our new decoder for Seth of how invigorated he is with his material, of how much he leans on the character versus Punk or Drew, where that's all out the window and what comes across much more authentic.
Totally.
And this was one where there isn't a whole lot of meat on this bone, and it's
but why even pose the question? If they didn't have a good answer to come up with for why Rollins granted Jinder this match. This just seemed to, like, I don't think Tony came across that well throughout the entire sort of online interaction, but this was the type of response that kind of proved Tony right. Like, Jinder has no justification being in this spot. The man hasn't had a singles win. This is
not the same Jinder I beat over a decade ago. And what has he done?
Yeah, what has he done since 2017?
Yeah. So anyway, that was our promo. It wasn't great. Finn Balor and Damian Priest against R-Truth and Miz. This was more just like the interplay between R-Truth and Damian Priest. Truth dumps his money all over the ground and then hands it off to Balor for his cut, and then to Dom, but won't give any to JD because he's not in the group. So Balor and Truth start the match, and he's beating on Truth. He's stomping on him, and then Truth rolls to the floor and he's yelling at Priest. He's like, he's really hurting me. And he winks at him like, this isn't part of the plan. Miz would get the tag after the break, and he screams massive balls as he goes for the skull-crushing finale. Balor stops it. Truth hits a scissor kick to Balor and apologizes, drops JD off the apron, and then Priest nails Miz, and Truth is behind Priest, and he winds up, but he won't punch him. And then it causes Balor to go for a roll-up, but Truth gets out of that, and Truth has to get hit with the South of Heaven by Damian Priest. And Priest does look regretful that he had to go to this, and Balor pins Truth in 8:02, and the look of Damian Priest, he felt bad.
Yeah, so I guess again, continuing to maybe deepen the Priest and Truth connection there. I thought the match was disappointing and maybe even a bit of a failure to me because I don't think the crowd reacted as much as you would expect. I thought it was also confusing having this layout coming off of the setup that they had with the Priest and Truth interaction, where
the announcers tried to cover for it, but I thought it was like really weak. To like, you're right. There wasn't any connective tissue to the promo that they had set the story up for.
Yeah, Priest had told Truth to not tag in, yet they start the match off with Truth already in there getting beaten up by Balor as if it was almost a straight match. And then in no part of the interaction did you even have Truth like play with the idea that he wasn't going to tag in. And I think it just maybe confused me personally about what the connection was between the opening segment and this match. And I think it confused the audience too. Like Miz's hot tag was completely flat because I think you're kind of left not really even knowing or wanting either team to win coming off of this. Like there's no
Miz
reason
was
for
just
Truth
a
to
spare
actually
part
win.
in this match that has no connection to the story beyond like being with Truth. And yeah, so the announcers covered by stating that, well, Truth was told never to tag in. They never said anything about don't start the match. Like, okay, is that
Fine, but where's the drama here? Like the only reason you do that segment prior was to set up the story and the drama of this match, and you had nothing as a result,
or just to make Truth look dumb, like he screwed up the plan. But it was, you're right, like there was no like build to this that like to me
there's no fun in it.
Yeah, and I think the audience responded as such. This was not one of the better R-Truth weeks for someone that has been a pretty fun character in this whole mix. Jinder is meditating and is awoken by Jackie. He has absolute clarity after a 7-year drought. He is the most talked about star of 2024. And everyone is divided, but his focus is singular. Everyone is unified when he beats Seth Rollins and becomes champion. So So this guy, maybe he's going to be a third-party candidate this year in the election. He's going to unify left and right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, campaign to unify, perhaps. Yeah, I thought it was a clever little promo from Jinder here. You know, making reference to everything that's been going on online without explicitly stating so. Like this, now is there a lie there? Like, can he actually be? Can we consider him
the most talked about star of 2024? No, we cannot state that. That sounds ridiculous.
Can we, how about the past week? Or how about one particular day of last week?
I wouldn't even go so far on that front. I would be really curious. I'm glad they didn't lean too much on that because I would really love to know how many people watching this would even be aware of that. Like
this was about as much as they were going to do. Like, if we were even asking, would they have put this match up in the very front of the show to be able to brag about whatever quarter hour it would have drawn? They didn't even attempt that and just kind of put this at the end. It was totally fine.
Shinsuke Nakamura video with the subtitles. Basically, he's stating that Cody better keep an eye open because our story doesn't end until I say so. It was pretty definitive the way it ended. So now he's hungry for the Rumble and he's entering. He's going to feast on dreams.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Shayna and Zoe Stark against Natalya and Tegan Nox. This was set up earlier in the day. Nox is beaten down, sends Baszler off the buckle, hits a high cross, and eventually makes the tag to Natalya, who comes in. Stark ducks a discus lariat, and then Natalya caught the Z360, tried for the sharpshooter. That was countered. And then there's a discus lariat on Baszler, followed by a PK from Nox for a 2 count. Stark then yanks Nox to the floor, stopping the heart attack, and super kicks Nox. Natalya goes for Stark on the apron and is caught in the Kirifuda clutch, but she kicks off the rope, tries to flip on top, but Baszler keeps the submission hold applied and taps out Natalya in 5 minutes and 20 seconds. The heat wasn't there, but I did think they had a fine match for the 5 minutes that they had. Just cold teams in a cold division.
Yeah, unfortunately, good run up towards the finish, but this match probably needed to be at a certain level that really would have captured this crowd's attention and didn't get there.
Next week, it's the face-to-face with Cody and CM Punk, Valhalla against Ivy Nile, Ivar against Chad Gable, and Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest.
Mm-hmm.
And then it is time for the main event. Seth Rollins and Jinder Mahal for the World Heavyweight Championship. And I thought Michael Cole was going to go there because the bell rings and his first words are an interesting tweet that was sent out by SmackDown General Manager Nick Aldis, wishing Jinder Mahal good luck. And Indi Sheer comes out with Jinder. Priest then comes out with the Money in the Bank briefcase as we go to commercial. And among the commercials I saw, next Monday, it is the return of The Bachelor.
I don't think it ever really goes away, John. Like they do like 3 of these a year. It's
like Survivor.
Here. Yeah, it's here for all the time. Yeah.
Man, did you never watch Ted Lasso, did you?
No.
God damn. What happened in season 3? That's what I want to ask people. I've just started this season. It's just what happened? What happened?
What happened?
I don't know. More interesting than this match. So Mahal applies an abdominal stretch and they cut to this close-up of Damian Priest, who could not have looked more bored. And this was a complete look into the man's soul as he was watching this.
It was a real reminder to just how this run was and what sort of toll it took on all of us watching Jinder have these sort of matches on a regular basis back then.
No, yeah, he was hindered. And Rollins escapes, hits a high cross. He's dealing with Indi Sheer, hits a springboard swanton and follows up with the cabrata. And Seth tweaks his knee and he's holding it. And they're mentioning, yeah, he has had knee problems before. I was like, remember when he had back problems? Remember when he was one bump away from paralysis? He's overcome that. Rollins hits a pedigree, but he comes down on the knee, so he can't go for the pin right away. When he does, Veer puts Jinder's foot onto the bottom rope, and then he leaps onto Veer, taking him out on the floor. Rollins wipes out, missing a frog splash, so Priest gets up and he's teasing the cash in. When Drew hops the barricade and brawls with Priest, Mahal lifts up Seth onto his shoulders and hits a gut buster for a 2 count. Veer then distracts Sangha, sends a chair into Jinder, and then Veer hits Seth with the briefcase. It was like, how many things can we do to convince people Jinder might win this? And the briefcase shot leads to the Colossus. Seth kicks out, Indi Sheer is ejected, and then a second Colossus gets countered, and Rollins hits the stomp to win in 13 minutes and 8 seconds. So I hope tomorrow there is a firm argument that low-key this was a banger from some people. This match was not that. It was just
who would argue? Well, okay,
dude, I promise you there will be people that will argue that this match deserves praise. That Jinder really showed out in these 13 minutes. Dude, it was for a match that just you could not have predicted what could have happened, that actually put some like momentum into a flat title match. Like that you could have come out here and just wowed everyone with, and this is what the performance was. It was just so lacking.
Well, I will say, like, I think contributors to the match do deserve praise, but Jinder wasn't one of them. You know, this was anytime Jinder was in control, like it was just not good. And again, reminded you about that period of title matches. But I feel like the structure of the match was about as resulted in about as best of a match as you could possibly get, I think, out of, you know, Jinder Mahal in 2024. They found a way to convince you that Jinder might have had any sort of chance to win through Indi Sheer, through Priest, and whether or not intentionally, this Seth Rollins knee injury, which maybe we'll talk a little bit more about afterwards. But Rollins, you know, was put into danger. I think, for at least a split second, convincingly towards the end of this match. And I think, the mark of success for this would have just been to convince the crowd of one particular near fall. And I thought they got two of them here, from the lung blower as well as from the Colossus. So not a good match by Seth Rollins standards, but I thought to draw this level of interest in a Jinder Mahal main event through whatever means that we got here, and then resulting even in a near fall, I thought I would consider overall this to be an overachievement.
Well, I just thought it was at best, standard 10-minute pro wrestling match on an episode of Raw. The idea of doing an angle to bring this back at the Rumble, I was glad we didn't have to go that way.
No.
It is an interesting question of whether Seth is going to be on this card or not for the Rumble. Like, maybe it's just surprising that they would hold him off of that show, but maybe they will, or they're just going to shotgun some challenger to set up. But I mean, man, you got one episode to do that and no tease here. And they didn't leave the door open at all for Jinder to come back with a rematch.
With Roman defending, I could just see, Rollins sitting this one out, and then maybe having a TV match or certainly defending it at the Chamber. So this came out during the show from PW Torch. Wade Keller here saying Rollins suffered a legitimate injury to his left leg late in his Raw main event against Jinder Mahal. Multiple PW Torch sources backstage at Raw say that he was helped to the back and eventually put weight on it. He is walking on his own, but with a definite limp. He will be further evaluated to determine the severity of the injury. All right, so we'll see.
Well, something to monitor, certainly, if there was an actual injury in the match, which would be, potentially another knee injury on top of it.
It would be terrible for the time of year. So maybe that'll, especially maybe take him out of, doing anything at the Rumble. But hopefully it's not serious enough that it'll affect any other plans.
I didn't think it affected his performance too much in this match. Like, he looked his standard self.
I mean, I thought it was selling, just given how he used it in the actual story of the match itself with the pedigree.
I mean, you got the Cabrata spot where he started grabbing the knee, and then they did the pedigree, which was a natural follow up of why he couldn't go for the pin. It totally felt laid out, but maybe there was an actual injury in there as well. But there you go. That was Raw on Monday night, and I guess what were the highs and lows of Raw for you, Wai? Did you
Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes segment I thought was very strong. In terms of in-ring DIY versus Dominik and JD I thought a very good match.
I think that was it for me.
Yeah, honestly disappointed by the R-Truth, Damian Priest stuff. At least in ring, the two women's tag team matches received very little reaction, and then you had probably overall a weaker main event, despite I think elevated interest from some of us.
Ripley and Becky, I thought a good segment, odd timing, but a good segment regardless. So that was Raw. One more episode until the Royal Rumble, and next week it's CM Punk and Cody face to face. Will they have to disclose text messages regarding each other over the years?
I'd love to see that discovery. Yes.
Okay.
We have some super chats here from people that are joining us live at youtube.com/postwrestling. Thank you very much for those of you watching us live, and especially those of you who choose to send in a super chat. And of those, William Rapp Jr. sends $2 just to let us know Keller just reported that Seth injured his leg. Yes. Thank you very much for that, William. Let's go to Jake Olinar, who sends $5. Thank you, Jake. He says, what do you think of the idea of a full TKO weekend in one city with the UFC pay-per-view one night, WWE PLE the next? Do you think we see that anytime soon?
I mean, they've flat out said that they're looking to do this. It's going to be the key is getting the requisite site fee that makes it advantageous for them to do this. So I don't think it's a question of if, it's just when and where they go.
And what sort of card will have enough crossover appeal to attract both audiences?
I don't think it's even necessarily that it's I think you want to have not so much that it's just people buying tickets to both nights, but it's it's going to acquire enough tourism that you're going to have some that are going to go to one. And we don't even know what this will be. If it is a SmackDown on a Friday, a UFC on a Saturday, what do you do with a pay-per-view? Because they're not both running on Saturday nights, which are their traditional nights. So, I mean, WWE could shift to Sunday. It will happen. But I don't see that happening here in the US. I think this would be like an overseas market that's going to spend a lot of money and are going to want to know what the fight card is in advance.
Thank you, Jake. Let's go to Brandon from New Jersey, who sends $10 to say, yo, what up? Is this thing on? Anywho, my heater went. I needs help to offset the cost or take off. Anywho, we outside's right job. All right.
Can you translate that to English?
I don't speak New Jersey. Sorry.
Okay.
Let's go to Andy, who sends 100 rupees. Thank you, Andy. He says, if Seth can't make Mania, does a Drew or Sammy match for Punk feel as marquee? Or is the move to give him Cody, presuming Gunther's tied with the IC title?
I don't think we should be writing out Seth at this moment.
Too early to say, but okay, hypothetical.
Jumping the gun. I think you have a ton of great options. I think you have, as you mentioned here, Drew is in a prime position that you could do Drew and Punk. You have like you ultimately, if you have The Rock, and I mean it certainly does leave then Cody for something else as well. Like you have a lot of players at the moment, like too many you could argue for the spots that you have at Mania. So I don't think this would be again, I would reserve judgment on Seth though.
Certainly. But let's say if that was the case, they have so many different options, and of the options, I think Punk and Cody. Like if people are going to be upset if we get Roman versus Cody delayed for another year, but I think a Punk Cody match is almost like a good enough consolation prize that people will forget about that. That's probably the biggest match in my opinion you could make for that night. Again, if Seth is not around.
All right.
Thank you, Andy.
Let's go on over to the feedback thread. And Muggin writes in, Jinder Mahal rode the wave of relevancy and it got him a main event, and it was a decent effort to stack the odds against Rollins. DIY against Judgment Day's B team was better than it had any right to be, and it was a great showcase for what got Gargano over in NXT. New Day got a much needed edge thanks to Imperium. The Becky Rhea segment was aces, and I love that Cody Drew segment brought up a match they've had from What Culture Pro, which he has included the link in here for everyone to go watch the 2017 match between the two.
Thank you, Muggin. We got Anirudh, who says, my 90-minute cut of Raw continues to be my favorite episode of wrestling television. The interesting characters in this year's Rumble have made it narratively dense. This is one of the best builds to a Rumble in recent memory. Unfortunately, the insertion of The Rock as Reigns' WrestleMania opponent means that CM Punk is the only viable option to win the whole thing. That being said, it feels like most of the legwork for all the matches other than KO and Logan has already been done, which makes TV feel a little bit like filler.
I totally disagree on like the foregone conclusion for this year's Rumble. I think automatically when you have the two titles, it's all you're doing is trying to create like some level of doubt. And you could go with Punk, you could go with the other option, like you could have Cody win. I think both those two alone, you can go either way. That if it comes down to Punk and Cody, that place will be electric because people will buy into either one winning that. Then you have, like, again, I don't think it's a high probability, but I think they have positioned Drew at a place where he could believably win this match and be part of that main event picture. And you're going to have an audience that is still in the back of their mind going to up until number 30 comes out if you're getting a Rock appearance. So right there you have, I would say, 3 strong options to win and an outlier in Drew McIntyre. And you cannot say that for too many years for the Rumble.
Agreed. I think there's an obvious choice and there's a favorite sort of outcome of this Rumble, but there are a lot of ways that they can get to these WrestleMania programs without just going the most obvious route. So we'll see what they do. I'm sure it'll be a good match either way. Let's go to A. Lopez, or I'll do this one, John. A. Lopez says, great episode of Raw this week. I like the development of R-Truth's involvement with the Judgment Day, as well as seeing the further push of DIY. I don't see them getting the tag title just yet, but I do hope that they're the next ones to have the tag titles since the crowd has taken to them, it seems. I'm honestly looking forward to seeing what Gunther's direction will be for Mania. I would personally like to see him go in a singles match with Brock and really give him a bigger spotlight for that Mania crowd with somebody like Brock. Lastly, I'm excited for both Rumbles this year. I think it's Punk's match to lose for the men's side, but I find the women's match more interesting since I can see both Becky and Bayley winning, but I hope that it's Bayley in the end since I see the Damage Control match having more legs than Rhea and Becky. Brock hasn't really been talked about much at all this Mania season. Do you see him being a part of the show?
Yes, I think he'll be back, and will be figured into something of significance going into that show. I guess the question will be if he is. I mean, you couldn't necessarily throw out the option that he shows up at the Rumble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, and that sets things up. Like he could be in there as well. And if he's in there, like you're obviously gonna have people, like it shouldn't be his year to win it, but you're still gonna have that believability among people, especially live in the moment watching the match as well. So I think they've done a great job building up this Rumble. Like this has been, different directions that they can go, and I think it's been a strong build so far. So there you have it, everybody. That is everything. A very busy show to get through, a ton of news, a packed weekend, and more to come. So later on this week, Wai and I are going to be getting together on Thursday for the latest edition of Talk, which we do roughly every quarter. So this is going to be our chance to catch up. I'm going to find out all the questions that I've been writing down to ask Wai for the last 3 or 4 months that I haven't gotten around to asking him. This is the show to ask him.
I'm going to ask you about Ted Lasso season 3.
Oh boy. If I can get through episode 2, like these episodes are like 50 minutes long and they're just been dreadful so far. And I really enjoyed the first 2 seasons, but anyway, we'll talk more about Ted Lasso on Thursday, but that's coming your way. Also on the cafe this week, we are going to have Rewind to SmackDown with, I think, a first time pairing with Wai Ting and Neil Flanagan, who will be reviewing SmackDown, because I am going to be deep in UFC 297 coverage this week. So I will be off Friday, and then Saturday I'm covering the show, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of the audio updates this week on the cafe from the various things that I'm covering for UFC 297 this week.
Very exciting. Also on our cafe feed, but for free for everybody who goes to postwrestlingcafe.com, we have our latest editions of Postmarks, where Bruce Lord, David Myers talk to members of the post wrestling community, and the aforementioned Andy B will be featured on this particular episode that releases tomorrow. Again, postwrestlingcafe.com. You can listen to it for free just by going to the site. And then on this weekend, MCU Later returns. WH Park, Rich Fan, talking about Echo episodes 1 and 2. Very good. I believe we're releasing that one for free. John?
Yes, that'll be a free release on Friday for everybody, and then they'll be continuing the season on the Post Wrestling Cafe. So there's a lot coming up this week. Karen and Bruce will have a New Beginning in Nagoya review. We've got Collision Course, and then Sunday I'll be doing a UFC 297 review, and it'll be a bit different because I'll be covering it live. So I'm probably going to be having some clips and interviews in that review, and then Sunday night, it's what everyone looks forward to every month. The NWA podcast gets together with Nate, Andrew, and Chris. So packed weekend. The whole schedule is up at postwrestling.com, and Wai and I will be back.
Huge thank you to everybody who helped out at Post Wrestling over the weekend, delivering either podcasts or coverage on the website. Expect more weekends like this, I suppose.
Man, I don't know how many we have in us, but yeah, it was a great effort from everyone at the site. We had all the shows covered, some great reports up, podcasts. So a big thank you to the whole Post crew. And that is it for us. So goodbye, everybody, as we give ourselves the hook.